I did spotlight you.
Nice.
You're the guest
Nice.
of honor.
My head's
Yes.
this big on the screen. Wow.
Okay, well, I will go ahead. It looks like we've got quite a few folks. So you guys probably all heard that this is being recorded. So if you have to drop off or want to share this with anyone internally in your organization, we'll share the link afterwards, and we'll also post it in Babele. So you guys can all access it there if you want to revisit. But I will go ahead and get started. And I want to say thanks to Barry, who is joining us from Chesterfield. If any of you attended State of GovTech, Barry was on one of our breakout panels on the main stage, and currently serves as the Chief Information Officer for Chesterfield County, Virginia, and is going to talk to us today about what the county's priorities are, any projects and needs that they have, and then we'll open up the floor for you all to ask him questions that you might have about being a startup in GovTech, and any insight that he can share. And then Barry is in our mentor network, but is also comfortable with you guys reaching out to him. So we'll share his contact information afterwards. So if you need to follow up or have any questions that you don't think of during this session, you will have access to him and his knowledge and wisdom. So with that intro, Barry, I'm going to go ahead. Well, let me ask, I know that you are starting to know a lot of our startups, but if you'd like, we can take a couple minutes for everyone to introduce themselves, or it's up to you how you'd like to.
Yeah, no, that'd be good if
okay.
If everybody could just say who they are and the company that they're with. That would help me a lot. Yeah.
Sure. And I will go ahead and just go down the list here. Of who come, well, it's in alphabetical order. So AJ, if you don't mind introducing yourself.
I'm AJ Thompson, the founder of Cloud Driven Solutions, and we provide meeting agenda management solutions for cities and counties.
Billy, you're next on my list.
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Billy Tracus. I'm calling in from Denver, Colorado. I'm with Citizen Lab. We're an online community engagement platform.
Darcy?
Hi, I'm with Grid Matrix Inc. I think there are a few of us on here. Grid Matrix is we're a software company, started last year, providing data analytics to cities and other transportation providers. I can let other people expand more.
David, I have you next on the list.
Hey, Barry. We met briefly at Civ Start conference with Third Line. We look for fraud, waste, and abuse in ERP systems. We help internal auditors, finance, and then specifically with IT, we kind of help with the roles and permissions and segregation of duties and how all that plays together. So,
Yeah, I remember you.
Thanks for jumping on another call.
Devin.
Hi, Barry. My name is Devin Coleman, and I am with Beam, formerly Edquity. Our CEO, David Helene, should be joining as well. We just executed a rebrand because we've expanded from administering emergency aid to college students to serving governments and helping to administer programs end to end, all within a single platform, from application to case management to payments.
Jack?
Hi, my name's Jack Cohen. I work for Impura. We're an energy data analytics startup. So we provide energy management information systems for local governments and commercial buildings, so that they can understand, where their energy is being used and understand their greenhouse emission footprint and find where different energy savings opportunities are.
Joe? Oh, I don't think. Joe, are you there?
Yep, sorry, I was talking about muted.
It's okay.
So I'm Joe Trapper with Third Estate, and we automate legal workflows to help governments stabilize underinvested in areas.
Madison?
Hi, Madison Harris. I'm with Grid Matrix as well as Chief of Staff. To give a bit more color to what we do, we leverage existing infrastructure to provide data and analytics to cities and other stakeholders regarding congestion, safety, and emissions.
Nee?
Hi, Barry. I'm the CEO of AI for Government. We build integration platform that allows data to be flown between different siloed systems. Thank you.
Nicholas?
Hi, Barry. I'm Nick DeAndre. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Grid Matrix here with Madison and Darcy.
And last but not least, William.
Hi, I'm William with Quali. We are a SaaS company that provides platform for city, county, nonprofits to engage with small businesses in their community.
Did I miss anyone? All right, Barry, the floor is yours.
Yeah, so Nick, you're with CivStart, right?
Yep.
Yeah,
Hey,
Nick,
Barry.
I'm sorry, Nick, that was
We've been
rude.
emailing a lot, but I don't think we didn't get much opportunity to talk at the event.
Yeah, we didn't get a lot of FaceTime, but that's okay. You were in the breakout that we did with the challenge-based process thing. I remember that. You know, I do think it's interesting, Jessica. I remember now. I remember Grid Matrix. I think I was actually on the evaluation panel for that. AI for Gov. I think I've actually sent my data manager to you guys to hook up with you guys to talk about that. And so, you know, anyway, it's nice to be able to remember some of the interactions that we had that I've had with some of the startups that are here today. So that's awesome. I'm actually let me find my notes here. So you had asked, first of all, your first thing was no death by PowerPoint, right? So no
Right.
PowerPoints, which I totally respect. And I will be looking at my notes. So you may want to just shout out if, I may not be following the chat very well.
Sure.
So, you know, so I've got some introductions to make. I'm not going to drone on and on and on about the introductions. I'm going to give you what you need to know, just as a frame of reference about myself and my department and my locality. And then we'll talk about the priorities and challenges. And I can point you to a very succinct list of priorities and projects that are the focus for the county, and give you some hints about, you know, how to go about looking for that with other localities, because we're all sort of like the same mindset, right? We're all the same ethos in local government IT. Talk about some of the needs that we have in solution and the things that we look for in solutions and solution providers, and some things to understand about local government. I've got a long list of things that if I were trying to build relationships with local government or market to local government or understand where there's a solution area that I want to step into, it's a long list of things that I would be looking at if I were sort of in your shoes. So hopefully some of this will resonate with you. I have as long as you need in this, so please feel free to ask questions along the way. We want it to be conversational and informal. So a little bit about me, just the nickel tour of me. My first job in IT was in 1982, and I've worked for computer manufacturers for about 4 years. I've worked in federal contracting for about 3 years. I worked in consumer electronics in 14 years. Now this is all under the guise of IT, right? I was a senior director, a junior officer for Circuit City stores. Some of you may remember Circuit City, and worked there for 14 years, gained a lot of experience. Came out of Circuit City, was laid off, and then went and started working in the public sector, and where I worked for the Virginia Information Technologies Agency, VITA, which is the state IT agency. I worked for them for a couple of years before because of some networking connections, I was able to transition over to Chesterfield as their first chief information officer. And that was, you know, that was whatever, 17 years ago. So I've been in public sector for 19 years. That's where I've spent, I feel like, the majority of my growth and the majority of my career. And I just discovered I have a real heart for civic technology, right? That's what it all boils down to, is the civic tech space is really a sweet spot for me. I've done everything from data entry to senior leadership like CIO. I've been a programmer, I've been a DBA, I've been a network engineer, I've been a network manager, I've been a business analyst. I've pretty much done everything along the way, somewhere along the way. I have a master's degree in public leadership from Virginia State University and an undergraduate in computer science from DeVry Institute in Irving, Texas. I'm a certified government CIO from Rutgers. That's through Rutgers and the Public Technology Institute. And I'm also a certified information security manager, CISM, through ISACA. So I was born and raised in Chesterfield. I raised 2 kids here, and that's very typical of local government employees. A lot of times you run into in these localities, you run into people who they live in the community that they're serving. And there's something really attractive about that for folks who work in local government. So I have a very technical background. And so I've always observed that the size of the organization has a lot to do with the technical expertise of the technology leadership. So like I wouldn't be a fit to be a CIO in a Fortune 500 company, but I'm a pretty good fit for like a Fortune 1000 company, like something like the size of Chesterfield. So the smaller the locality you deal with, the more technical the technology leadership will be. Has always been sort of my observation. Now, as I said, it's all about tech. This is all about Chesterfield County. Do not confuse us with Chesterfield County, Missouri, or Chesterfield County, South Carolina. They are very different localities. Chesterfield County, Virginia. So everybody knows where Virginia is, obviously. We have about 365,000 residents, about 425 square miles. And we're located in central Virginia, just south of Richmond. We're like a bedroom community for Richmond and Henrico. Henrico and Richmond are 2 hours north, just across the James River. The style of government is predominantly centralized. We're a full service provider. What does it mean to be a full service provider, right? We provide 100% of the government services that are needed for our constituents. About the only thing we don't provide is road service. That's handled by VDOT. Everything else is provided by the county. Sheriff, police, fire, water, mental health, social services, courts, no Fortune 500, Fortune 50 company has more lines of business than your local full service local government. And so Chesterfield County is no different. We have a jail, we have just mental health facilities, inpatient, outpatient. We have a lot of different lines of business. And we also have a lot of state entities that have a local presence. Now, this is different state to state, and it's interesting for those of you that might market more to human services. This is a good thing to understand for the state in which you work. Some states, it's a state agency that just sort of sits there and there's really not a lot of interaction with the locals. In our environment, our state agencies actually have local departments in our local government. Like our social services employees are county employees, and they use state systems and they deliver services directly. So it's a little bit of an odd arrangement that's good to understand as you talk to these locals. We have a mix of elected officials. Okay, so all politics is local, right? According to Tip O'Neill, and so we don't have elected judges, but we have elected commissioners, elected treasurer, elected Commonwealth attorney, sheriff, and a few others. So our judges are not elected. They are, I know like in Texas, judges tend to be elected, not appointed. So electeds are very different state to state and from locality to locality. Not all localities in Virginia have a commissioner and a treasurer, by the way. Some of them just have a finance office and a chief financial officer. Depends on the county and the city charter. The interesting thing about the electeds is they can have their own funding streams, right? So sometimes they get to call their own shots. They may even be exempt from following local ordinances, local policies, even local procurement rules. So they're called constitutional officers in Virginia, and the way they're treated is really more a matter of collaboration and political affiliation than anything else. So it's something else to keep in mind. We do not have any incorporated cities or towns in Chesterfield. And this is one thing I will ask. This is always like a civics question I ask when I do presentations like this. Does anybody understand the difference between Virginia and all other states in the country with regards to cities, towns, and counties and their formation or organization? Anybody know? Nobody wants to say? All right. So Virginia is the only state in the country that does not have incorporated cities within counties. Cities and counties are fully separate in Virginia. For example, in Texas, Fort Worth is part of Tarrant County, right? It's actually Tarrant County has city of Fort Worth within it. It's physically part of it. It's not an independent city. In Virginia, all cities are independent. They do not share geography or governance with the county that might surround them. Now, towns do. There can be little towns that are part of the county and so forth. We don't have any of those. But it really does give Virginia a little bit different flavor in terms of the way the technology is used to provide services, because we can't depend on the city to provide anything for us because we don't have any cities. We're just the county. This is another reason why you'll find that counties in Virginia tend to do very well in technology competitions, because we have a lot more opportunity to step up and to exercise technology. More needs means perhaps better revenue streams and perhaps more opportunity to use technology. So that's a key difference between Virginia and all other states in the nation. Now, in terms of my department in the county, the IST, Department of Information Systems Technology, we have 106 part-time and full-time employees, probably about 10 contractors. We have about 45 customer partner departments, and we're in the community operations division of the county. Why we ended up in community operations, I don't really know, other than there was some rebranding that went on, and that's just sort of where we landed. We don't have a lot to do with community operations. We manage the website. That's our main source of community outreach, right? I don't do outreach as the CIO to the residents. I would like to have the time to do that, but I'm afraid that time does not exist. We are predominantly centralized for technology. Something else that's really helpful to understand as you talk to locals is how much information management, technology management, data management actually happens in the customer departments, how much of it happens centrally. We are predominantly centralized. We've always been like that. It's more from a budgeting aspect than anything else, but it's always been very productive from my county. And we are a full service IT organization. We have very little. We have one managed service provider that takes care of hardware, that takes care of desktop hardware. Everything else is done by my organization: the desktops, the laptops, the network, the cloud operations, the Active Directory, the email, the Microsoft 365 subscriptions, all the technology solutions, all the cybersecurity, it all comes through my organization. So some definite advantages to that, and something that's good to know about organizations that you deal with. I have about 16 different unique skill areas in my department: data, network, enterprise systems, VBAs, just the 16 different skill areas. And that we know that because we have a career development program that attempts to set career goals and treats our employees as people who need careers, not just jobs. And so we have to define those skills very, very acutely for them. So that's why I know there's 16 areas. Our main technologies and our main vendors are Microsoft. Azure is our cloud platform. M365 is our end user standard for desktop software. Tyler Technologies is a big vendor of ours. Acela is a big vendor, as well as Motorola in the public safety space. Civic Plus is our hosted website vendor. And of course, we use a large suite of Adobe tools, everything from Adobe Sign to Adobe Pro to all the other, Adobe Cloud tools that Adobe offers. So that's sort of the background of where we are. We're for a county our size, we're pretty typical in Virginia. Smaller counties may see a little bit less centralization. Those counties may not be quite as full service as we are. Larger counties may see even more centralization or even less, depending on the county. We, I think, are the 4th or 5th largest county in terms of population in Virginia. Chesapeake, Virginia Beach, locality, not just county. Fairfax, Loudoun, Prince William are all sort of our contemporaries in Virginia. Arlington is another contemporary in terms of population and for benchmarking. So the next thing I was going to talk about was priorities. This is something that Jessica was interested in. What are the priorities for the county? And the best way to find out about locality projects and priorities is to look for a list on the website. Now, I know y'all are probably groaning because you probably get really tired of looking at locality websites. But I can tell you that on our website, it's very specific. If you know where to look, okay, it's very specifically laid out for. And I'm going to put this. I'm going to attempt to put this link in the chat for. You can look at this at your leisure. This is the county administrator list of priorities. It goes through fiscal 22. You always have to ask, what's your fiscal year, right? Our fiscal year ends June 30th and starts July 1st. So this is last fiscal year, fiscal 22's accomplishments, and then fiscal 23's priorities, which is the fiscal year we're in now. It's broken down by our strategic plan. We have 6 different goals in our strategic plan, and each one of those goals has a list of priorities, and those priorities turn into projects. And you can look at those and see pretty much, I would say probably 3/4 of them have something to do with technology. So I get dragged into all of these, right? And so we have something to say about all of these, and we guide the technology for all of these. So again, it's important to understand the role the local IT people play in all these in the locality. If you can't find something like this, if you're trying to work with the locality, or no matter the size, everybody knows what they should be working on. Everybody should have a strategic plan. And if they're doing their jobs, they should have a list of projects and priorities aligned to the strategic plan the way ours is. Now, they may not be publicized, it may not be on the website, but this is where FOIA is your friend, right? Sunshine laws, Freedom of Information Act requests, call the county administrator's office, ask for a copy of projects and priorities for the coming fiscal year. And that's how you get it. Now, I'm not going to read this list to you. It's fairly extensive. And at the very end of it, I think, I'm just going to look at my own copy here. I believe at the end of it, you will see a copy of our strategic plan. If you go to the last page, and it talks about the strategic plan for 2020 to 2024, mission, vision, and values, and the 6 areas. So, again, I think it's a gold mine. I had to go back and refresh myself and look at it. We have to report on this on a quarterly basis in terms of what we've done for each one of these projects. And these turn into projects that sit in our backlog from a technology perspective. Some of these things get addressed with existing technology, which is preferable, right? You always want to use the things you've got laying around, especially when they're platforms or extensible cloud services or something like that, before you go get something off the shelf or code something or create something in a no-code, low-code environment. So those are the priorities. I really don't have any much else to say about that. I can give you some feedback on sort of the challenges that the county has, and you can take these to heart. These are shared by a lot of different localities. Okay, Chesterfield, remember, is sort of a quasi bedroom / suburban / rural county. We have aspects of urban, suburban, and rural all in 425 square miles. We have everything from at the southeast corner of the county, which is low and middle income, more economically disadvantaged, or people of color, to northwest area, which is probably middle to upper income with less diversity, right? And so one of the major challenges this county has is serving multiple masters, right? And in a non-homogeneous community, the way the leaders give their time and their resources and tax revenue that they get they spend a great deal of time organizing that and going through that. You'll see themes of that through the strategic plan and through all of those initiatives, especially in the healthy living, well-being, and thriving communities strategic goals. So that's just a little bit of background about our community. We're sort of all over the place, and we're also all over the place in terms of senior living, young families, and young adults. So we're really good with young families. I mean, you know, if you're buying your second home, great place to be. We have great schools, some of the best schools in the nation. Actually, some of our schools are in the top 10 nationally for schools. The school district that I'm in, although I don't have any kids in school, is one of the top 10 schools in the nation, Cosby High School. So, you know, balancing, we've heard this before from like senior citizens. It's like, when are you going to stop spending so much money on the young kids and spend more on the seniors, right? Essentially. And so managing through that dichotomy of who you want to be investing in and the civic infrastructure that supports them is a balancing act, frankly, that the leaders have to deal with on a daily basis. So in terms of challenges, the first challenge I will tell you is probably, I feel like, is the low-hanging fruit that is not that easy to pick, but everybody knows it's there, and that's involving residents and government. Okay, so our ethos and our attitude in Chesterfield is that local government is stronger and it's more resilient, and it's better when citizens take an active role. Okay. And I'm not just talking about when they educate them, you know, when they educate themselves, when they invest in their communities. And I'm not just talking about the vocal minority. We will always have the vocal minority. If you've ever been to a board, council, parish, public meeting, you know who I'm talking about, right? The ones that always show up, the ones that always have their opinions. They walk up to the lectern, you know exactly what they're going to say. Moving beyond the vocal minority to the silent majority of the residents in the locality is huge. And so that citizen outreach, you know, that bringing them in and letting them feel like they're part of the solution and gathering all their feedback is something we're constantly trying to do. When we do that, we can build advocacy for our programs within these external groups. That helps quite a bit. So systems that do all that and do it, in fact, that's a tough nut to crack, though, I'm telling you, because we're talking about busy families and people who are, you know, they may have distrust in government. Number one, if you have a lot of immigrant population in your locality, you know, if they're first generation Americans, if they've just been here for one generation, they may have come from a country where you just don't trust the government, period. You don't think people trust the government in this country? There are some countries where trusting the government is like so far off the radar, it's not even considered. And so we actually have a separate program where we have a government citizens academy specifically for immigrants. So we bring them in and we try to convince them that, you know, government's here to help. I'm from the government, I'm here to help, right? But we're here to help. We're here to provide services. We're transparent. We like to be open. We're not corrupt. You know, so everything from that to trying to pull people in who may be young or may have maybe just not a favorable view of government in general. But the more you can get people involved at the local level, the better your local government will be, is the way we feel. But it's a challenge. So it's my number one challenge on the list. And again, it's moving beyond that vocal minority. Managing growth is Joseph, do you have a question?
Yeah. I was wondering if we could drill into that a little bit more, Barry, because like with Citizen Lab and with what we do with Third Estate, you know, we work very hard and keep an eye on how technology can affect dealing with the local populace and ensure that their voice is heard, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
Have you guys started to adopt new technologies to bring in those community voices or detect areas where you're not reaching the right population, et cetera?
You know, I'm not sure it's a technology problem. I think technology can help with this, but you know, we have social media platforms. We have online platforms where people can opt in to get calendar invites for meetings and so forth. I mean, obviously we can always use technology more effectively, but I think a lot of this has to do with good old fashioned outreach to people, outreach to certain groups, to certain demographics, to get them involved. And then the question becomes, do we have the right technology in hand to, you know, to so that they can feel that they are part of the solution. You know, what I've observed is that, you know, people are they're so used to Facebook and Amazon, and it's the Amazon experience, right? Everybody wants a shopping cart. Everybody wants to be able to search, find it in the first page, because if you have to look past the first page, you know, it's not worth looking at, right? So your ability to do searches, their ability to present them a modern experience technology-wise, I think is really key here. You know, as soon as you say you want them involved and you send them a PDF and an email to fill out and mail back to you, that's, you know, it's a non-starter. So anyway, I think it starts with the government understanding our perspective is that we're better about that. I actually have an entire group. It's not my group, it's county administration group that's focused on citizen outreach. Constituents, it's called constituent services. They handle all the FOIA requests. They handle all the requests for special meetings. They are the interface to our board of supervisors. They get their public affairs is part of that group, the PIO, the public information officer. And I think that's a demonstration that we recognize that. And then, you know, I'm always trying to get, like, I think they are, is it GovQA? Is that the system that can do FOIA management? I think they're GovQA customers. We brought that to them. So Joseph, I hope does that help a little bit?
It does. Thank you so much.
So that's involving residents and government. That's a key challenge. Managing growth is another challenge. If your locality is lucky enough to have growth to manage, there are a lot of localities that struggle to create growth. We happen to be blessed with a lot of good civic infrastructure. We've got high volume, high pressure water lines and 3 different sources of water in our county. So it's a really good environment. And we have a Dominion Power generation facility in our county, right? So we can drive water, telecommunications, and power to different parts of the county for managing the growth. A lot of counties don't have that, and so but managing that growth is difficult. You know, it's the business growth. It's also the residential growth. A lot of counties struggle with this. You know, do you want to have large scale subdivisions in your locality? A lot of localities don't. It is a key driver of revenue for us. I will tell you, most of our revenue comes from residential real estate taxes. We'd like to see that flip more towards business, and we'd like to have more tax dense infrastructure for that. Manufacturing facilities, for example, are incredibly tax dense, where a shopping mall is not, right? So shopping malls create a lot of traffic. Manufacturing facilities create a different kind of traffic that you have to be careful with. So managing that growth and finding the balance of growth from business and residential is very important. You know, do you take a build it and they will come attitude? That's expensive. I'm gonna build a road and extend a sewer line for the cost of $10 million in the hopes that I can sell the land at the other end of it to somebody who will use it for manufacturing. Or do you make it a proffered condition as part of the zoning appeal, or do you have some other kind of arrangement that you strike? That economic development is very touchy, and also requires a lot of communication with the state. So managing growth is, without angering your residents, is very important. We have a lot of somewhat entitled residents, frankly, that, you know, they move to these big subdivisions, they get a perfect life in this big subdivision. They don't want a plastics plant 5 miles away because they're worried that they're gonna have to listen to the noise or the vapors or the traffic or whatever. But they're like, they're not in my backyard, folks, right? The NIMBYs, I think they're called, right? There's a lot of that sometimes in localities like mine. So that's managing growth. The other is the trends in residents. In the residents aging in place is sort of a lurking issue, right? So the demographics of localities change, just like shopping malls are born, they mature, and then they tend to be torn down and somebody replaces them with something. Localities are the same way. They born, their age, and if you don't maintain them correctly, they can fall into disrepair. Same thing can be said for how you treat the civic infrastructure that supports your seniors. And so, we don't see a lot of technology solutions focused on that, frankly. Although we're finding more seniors who are surprisingly tech savvy. My mother passed away in August, and before she passed away, she was 85, and she was paying her bills online. She was, downloading books to her Kindle and reading them online, and she was fairly techno savvy. And I think we're seeing more and more of that. And I'm surprised we don't have more civic solutions that are specific to seniors, quite frankly. But the trends in resident aging and the new needs are something a lot of localities deal with. The needs of senior citizens are very different from young families, very different. Needs for transportation, needs for access to quality healthcare, access to hospitals, access to social services. They're all just very different for seniors than they are for young families. So, and that sort of gets you to the area. Administrations, county administration. Reading something on Reddit the other guy, this guy's rent is tripling at the end of his lease, and he was questioning what he was going to do at the end of his, going up from $1,500 for a studio apartment to $4,500 for a studio apartment, and he didn't know where he was going to live come February. So, affordable housing in our community is a real challenge. Build house in my county is well over 3,000 square feet. That's the average size, right? So there are a lot that are being built that are 4,000 and 5,000 square feet, and the ones that are being built under that are not that far under. So those are expensive houses. Those are not houses for first-time home buyers, unless you got a couple of very professional incomes. And it's also not it's not an environment where seniors are going to be comfortable. They might have worked all their lives to pay off, a 3-bedroom, 2-bath ranch, and where are they going to move to in that environment? Rents for apartments are through the roof. The inventory of smaller homes that the first-time home buyers want are occupied by the seniors who can't afford to move out of them. So it becomes a real sort of how do you solve this problem? Because you can't make builders build, sorry, that's my dog. You can't make builders build less expensive houses. There's really very little way to do that. We don't have any concept of like rent control and not like in an urban environment in the county. So affordable housing is an issue. And now we have done things with like a land bank and land trust, and we are using our land bank to build homes for low income, but we're talking about dozens of homes here, not the hundreds that are needed. Community connectivity and broadband is next on my list. This is a big problem for some locals coming out of the pandemic. The pandemic really highlighted just how poor we are in this country in terms of broadband connectivity. Now it's getting a lot better. There's a ton of money being spent on this. And it's not so much an issue in my environment because I have literally like 98% coverage in my county. I have a grant in for the remaining 2%, which is really expensive, by the way. The last 5% of your broadband will cost you quite a bit of money, a lot more than that first 50% perhaps cost you. But the connectivity of making sure that everybody's got access and the inclusion and equity and education aspects of broadband or what people are starting to spend time on. Everybody's looked at their availability. Everybody's focused on making it available. But once you make it available, is it affordable, right? Do people have access to the technology to use it? Do they have Chromebook? Do they have a laptop? What are they going to use? Are they going to use their phone? And then, do they know how to do that? Do they know how to do it safely? So we're seeing people move beyond the availability question, which was the first question that gets asked, to more of the equity and inclusion aspects of it. So that is a key differentiator in cities and counties. Counties are struggling with that. I have some friends in rural counties that don't know if they will ever get to where I am with regards to availability, just because of the distances and the economics of it. And in cities, I think we're seeing a move towards the affordability programs that support that, the availability of the technology to use the broadband, and then the learning that's required, the education that's required to do it and to do it safely. So we're all over the place with this, but everybody's running really hard to try to make progress. Diversity, equity, and inclusion is part of the language of how we deal with everything now in the county. I think this is common in a lot of counties. A lot of people's eyes have been opened over the last few years to the value of not just the risks that you run, but the value of including DEI in your strategic plans, in your project planning, in your recruiting efforts, and in all phases of your local government. If you don't pay attention to this in all parts of your government, then you'll underperform. That's what it boils down to. That's what people are waking up finally to find out. So we have a DEI chair in our county. We are doing a diversity, equity, and inclusion strategic plan to try to chart our course, to make a roadmap of here's where we are, here's our future state that we want, here's the roadmap to get us from point A to point B. That's our strategic plan that we're putting together for it. So I think a lot of counties are struggling with this. Frankly, they're not used to thinking along these lines, quite frankly, and they're struggling for how there may be some old guard in some counties and cities versus new guard. So we're on a continuum of this. At least it's headed in the right direction, in my opinion. So resident expectations is the next challenge that I would mention it. Joseph, you may be able to relate to this. Like I was saying, everybody wants an Amazon, right? But does anybody, I'm dating myself here, does anybody remember or know what a Sears Roebuck Christmas catalog is, right? So like this was a classic. It's one of my strongest childhood memories, right? You get the catalog and you go through and you like cut the little ads out and you give them to your parents. It's like, here's the stuff I want for Christmas, right? Tell Santa this is what I want. And so they don't do that anymore, I don't think. I get a catalog or 2 or 4 or 5 every day in the mail because it's that time of year. But everybody wants the Amazon experience, right? They all want Amazon and Facebook and TikTok kind of world, and it's difficult to provide with civic tech. So it's about resident expectations. That's and meeting them. Meeting consistently is a challenge. So we talked about resident outreach and involvement. We already talked about that one. Schools collaboration is a real challenge. Now, let me just do a little check here before we go any further. Jessica, is this the kind of stuff you were interested in hearing about? Is this?
Yes, I am, for sure. And I think the points that you've talked on, as you're mentioning things, I can think of different startups that these relate to, but like you mentioned before, if folks have questions as topics come up, please feel free to raise your hand and I'll try to flag Barry. But so all of y'all know I'm getting my doctorate in education. So schools collaboration, I perked up when you said that. So I'm going to say yes to that one, but please do feel free to ask questions.
Okay, I just want to make sure I'm
Yeah.
providing the relevant content based on your experiences and what you wanted to get out of those. So, all right, so schools collaboration. So in many local governments, I won't say all, because there are some better than some, worse than others. In many local governments, the school system is funded by the local government. If it's not an independent school district, it tends to be funded by the local government. And it's treated like a separate business, right? Like, here's $500 million, go educate our kids and do a good job. And when it comes time to build a new school, let's argue about that and where we're going to put it and from a capital perspective. But here's $500 million or $200 million or $10 million or whatever a year, go manage your school system. Now, the pressure with this is that it's a lot of money, number one. Number two, the politicians tend to want to either take credit for or take credit for doing a good job with it, or take credit for pointing out where things need to change. School board members can be elected or appointed depending on your locality and depending on the charter in the state. So if they're appointed by the local politician, then things tend to maybe be able to smoother. If they're elected, then you get the opportunity for cross political party rivalries and conflict. You know, it takes a lot to build an effective relationship with the school system. A school system has a infinitely fewer lines of business than a local government, right? They tend to be solely focused on several key metrics with students, and they are not quite as focused necessarily on fiscal management or technology governance or anything. It's all about either technology to help the teachers or technology to deliver the programs to the students. And then there's always some amount of back office technology. So schools collaboration sometimes is a really touchy subject. We are trying really hard in our county to do better about that. We do population forecasting and data analytics and full stack technology data programs with the school system to help them plan their needs for civic infrastructure. I have a relationship with the Chief Technology Officer for Schools, Dr. Tim Tillman, and his staff. We meet with them regularly to try to collaborate on things. We're doing a lot better than we used to do, but you know, it's sometimes it can be a touchy subject, and there are very few successful collaboration or truly consolidated IT organizations, technology organizations between schools and county. They tend to be very separate. And that is like the holy grail of consolidation, by the way, is when you can get a school system and a general county city government to use the same technology provider. That's really, the economies of scale there are great. It's very rarely implemented in my observation. So the other would be state cooperation and state collaboration, right? So I told you all politics is local. Well, you know, you only have to go up one level before you run into state politics. No matter what local government municipality type you work in, you're going to eventually have to deal with the state. And all too often, state collaboration and state relationships are strained between local government and state government. State passes the laws, locals enforce the laws or live by the laws. Sometimes that results in unfunded mandates. Sometimes it results in loss of autonomy for locals. Sometimes it results in expectations that are set with citizens that the locals then need to make good on. So we find ourselves a lot working as almost lobbyists from a lobbying perspective with our state representatives, who most of which have absolutely no idea how local government works, right? Like, you could take any given state legislator and ask them how this works at the local level, they probably won't know, because they have policy advisors and they have think tank people who are leading them down a path. And then, the local government legislative liaisons come in and say, just hold the phone. We're the ones that have to stand up in the committee meetings and say, look, really the way that works is this. And although the intent of this legislation might be good, we can't support it because in effect, it's going to cause this to happen. And so, we have a legislative program, like all local governments have a legislative program. And that legislative program is public knowledge. It's a public document that can be made available to people like civic technology providers. And sometimes it can be very intricate, and sometimes it can just be very general, depending on whether you've even got a legislative liaison. We have a legislative liaison who goes down to GA and stands up and, hobnobs with all the lobbyists and all the legislators and so forth. And my local association, Valgite, which is the Virginia Association of Local Government IT Executives, all CIOs and IT directors from all the counties and cities in the state, we have a legislative platform that we just drafted that we're going to use in the upcoming GA session, where, we're going to use that to determine whether we support as an organization a certain piece of the legislation or not. It also calls out areas that we'd like to see movement in legislation, things like reform of the Virginia Public Procurement Act, things like reciprocal reporting of cybersecurity events, things like that. There are some very hot button issues for us. So so state cooperation is a big deal. It's something that suffers in a lot of states. I don't really know any states that really do this extraordinarily well. I know we don't do it in Virginia very well at all, despite our best efforts.
Joe, I see your hand up. Do you have a
I'm
question?
sorry, Joe, go ahead.
No, all good. So Barry, just before we move on from that, because that's one of the issues that we've seen. So when you have these mandates that come down from the state, and there is that gap between what the law says and how things actually have to be executed on the ground, how do you guys go about implementation of those changes?
Well, for some of the things you can, some things may get ignored.
Yeah.
The other is that you have to find the money. You have to find it somewhere. We always make sure that the local electeds understand fiscal impact and resident impact for things like this, because the local electeds are the ones who are supposed to have the relationships with the state senators and state legislators, right? That's their job. I mean, the politicians are supposed to politic, right? So, we try to make sure that there's a lot of meetings with the board, our board of supervisors, during the GA over different things that are hot buttons. But at the end of the day, they're going to do what they're going to do what they want to do. They're going to pass what they want to pass, and then we have to live with it. So there are grant funds that can be exercised to make up the difference. Sometimes, again, there can be some strategic neglect, frankly, as a strategy. This is like Vegas, right? What's said here stays here. But that can be a strategy, or delayed implementation, or there's a number of things you can ask to have included in the legislation to temper the impact, like the adoption date. You never want things adopted like right away. You always want them to take effect halfway through the fiscal year or something, right? To give you an opportunity for a soft landing to adopt something. I hope
it does. I mean, I was asking because it's how we craft some of the algorithms to, what was said and what has to be done, but how you want things to result is kind of things that we worked on. But it's an interesting take. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Sure. Next thing I have is recruiting and retention. It's a pressure point for all government. All right. So employees with portable skills are in high demand. Accountants, budget professionals, technology professionals, even risk management folks. The private sector has figured out finally where a source of disciplined, educated, talented, underpaid workers are, and they're coming after us. So I've lost any number of people, probably, I don't know, half a dozen to private industry this year. I've lost some for as much as 100% of their salary. That is, their salary was doubled. My average when they go to the private sector, and nobody leaves government to go to government, right? That's not even a thing. They're all going to, if they want to work for government, they're going to work for us, right? If they want to make more money, life-changing money, send your kids to college money, buy a new van money, they're going to private sector, and the average increase is $32,000 a year. That's the average. Like I said, I've had some go for, 60, 70,000. And these people will come to me in tears and they're like, look, I'm sorry, but this is literally life-changing money. I can send my kids to college. So what do you say to that, right? You say, go and be well, right? Maybe come back to us in a few years. So recruiting and retention is huge in local government. Systems that help us do that help manage the workforce and keep people around, maybe focus on careers, not jobs, maybe focus on the things that keep them satisfied, are incredibly important to us. How to attract people, how to attract the potential employees to public service is another hot button thing. I've always been of the opinion that people come work for public service because they want to make a difference, right? They don't want to just make $1. It's not like they're going to work for Circuit City. We're just about selling VCRs as fast as we can. We don't really care how you use them. I mean, we want to make people's lives better by providing a first-rate locality. And, sometimes that lights people up. Sometimes, some people are more civically minded than others. So I would say that's recruiting and retention. My last sort of county challenge is about the workforce, right? The current workforce that we have, adjusting to hybrid work schedules, the management that's required to actually manage someone who you can't see on a daily basis, right? Compensation for existing staff, healthcare costs, mental health issues in office environments is huge now. I mean, we have a mental health crisis in this country, right? And they're selling Narcan in vending machines in Kentucky. It's just mind-bogglingly sad. Being able to recognize key performers and this whole silver tsunami, they're calling it, of the people who are leaving the workforce and retiring. Many of them are not retiring. They're leaving they're retiring from the workforce, from the civic workforce, and going to work for the private sector or going to work for someone else and double dipping because of the economic pressures. So how you manage the existing workforce is a real challenge for local government. So that's, those are the challenges that I see in the county. Some of them are more technology centric than others. I have an entire other list of technology challenges that's just, I don't know, how long do you want to go?
Well, we're actually over by 1 minute. So if we could, what I would love to do is open the floor for anyone who has any questions. If Barry, you have time to stay on, and other folks do as well. I do want to be mindful of time. But the other thing we can do, if you guys want to send me a list of questions, I can send you a follow-up, and we might even want to, if we want to, we haven't done this in the past, but if we want to schedule another 30 minutes or hour with you so we can dive even deeper, I'd be happy to do that as well. So, but I want to be very respectful of your time. I don't have any more meetings until like 3 o'clock today. So I have an open schedule this afternoon, but
I'm good till 2. I can send you, I've got all my notes.
Okay.
I'll email you what I'm going through, and you may want to, you can distribute it however you see fit.
Awesome. Well, before we close out for today, does anyone have any burning questions you'd like to run by Barry before we close out? No. Okay. Well,
I will.
Go ahead, Joe. Yeah.
I didn't ask before because I wanted to let other people get in for affordable housing and stuff, but from a technology and affordable housing standpoint, how is the county viewing it? And I'll give you some examples. One county, for example, there's new accessory dwelling unit legislation. So they're trying to deal with the affordable housing issue by doing algorithms to say, person A, B, and C, here's a package to build affordable housing. We have another county who we're talking with who we're dealing with finding, there's lots of homes owned by dead people or owned by banks, who keep paying the mortgage, but nobody knows the house is vacant. So they're trying to bring more of those into the active market so that people can actually live there to help decrease vacancy and decrease prices. Kind of what's your county specific plan to move things forward? Because when I looked, it talked about, LIHTC and the development, but I used to work at HUD. Those are pretty standard things that everyone says and tends to be different from what's actually being executed.
Right. I think we would, and I'll have to check, this might be on our roadmap somewhere for our data warehouse. We have a data and analytics program that allows us to do civic infrastructure planning. And so part of those data sets is, income, it's real estate records, and I'm sorry, was it line three line? What was the name of the?
Or third estate.
Third estate, I'm sorry.
Yep. No problem.
That's what third estate does, right? You sort of rationalize the role, the property roles, the real estate property roles with reality, if you will, to improve that tax base. So
we're even simpler than that. We basically, the law says that this house can do this, so we just help the government match what the laws say they can do with the actual things that can happen, because people forget, like, oh my God, I can actually do that under the law.
Right. I remember the presentation from CivStar.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So, but anyway, what we would do, we would see this as a use case in our data and analytics program, and we would look for the different data sets that we could curate and bring through our models to inform how we could do that, where we could increase the inventory of more modestly sized and priced homes. Maybe there are a lot of dead people out there, a lot of homes in foreclosure, a lot of things the banks wouldn't mind getting rid of, and if there could be something, we would see that as a use case, I believe, in our data and analytics program. Now, not a lot of localities have the same kind of investment and success with that we do. So we're probably a lot better off than some localities are with regards to that.
No, I appreciate it.
Well, Barry, it looks like we are losing some people because we're over by 5 minutes, but thank you so much. This has been really informative, and I'll send a link to the recording with everyone, along with your notes that you're graciously going to share with us, and then your contact information. But for those who are still on the call, as a reminder, Barry is a member of our mentor network, so is open and is open to meeting with anyone who has any further questions from today. So, and it looks like I missed something in chat. Oh, yeah, thanks. All right, well, thank you all for giving us an hour today. And again, Barry, thanks for meeting with us. This was great.
Thank you. I've enjoyed it. Let me know if I can help moving forward. I'll send you my notes, Jessica.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Barry.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.